welcome back to SOS Stories of Survivors. I'm your host, Serina Dansker, and today we are shining a light on a beautiful woman, Mary Valdovinos. She has been through hell and back, and she's got one story you're gonna just want to listen to. Um, she was a high achieving student. She had such a bright future. And then, as life does, it changed and everything fell apart. And without further ado, I want Mary to tell her story. Mary, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me, Serena. I really appreciate it.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad that you were able to be here. I'm so grateful that you're here because your story is one that a lot of people, can relate to. They know someone or they've themselves been through addiction. And but before we get into all of that, I'd love to talk about who you were, how you grew up, before everything changed.
Sure. So I was born and raised in Stamford, Connecticut, where I now reside again. But for middle school and high school, we moved to Norwalk, Connecticut. Not too far, but Fairfield County. My parents were both immigrants. They both worked really hard. My mom was in college when she met my dad, and he was working. And they really gave my sister and I every opportunity that they could. And so yes, I'm the oldest of two daughters. My younger sister, Stephanie, is just 2 years younger than me.
Wow.
And we had a very nice upbringing, not entirely perfect, as nobody's is, but beautiful and loving. And, we adjust to life circumstances. So early on, I was very outgoing as a child, something that I've sort of returned to as an adult now, but it took me quite some time to get there. I was friendly. I did really well in school. I was an overachiever, and I think I might still be today.
I love that.
But I really enjoyed school, and especially when I did well at it, it really motivated me to keep going. And I had a good number of friends. I went through some bullying at times, and especially with girls, girls can be a little bit mean, but it
Yes,
happens now, and it's, I think, maybe even worse now with the social media and
I
everything.
think so.
But yeah, I struggled with that quite a little bit. And then high school came and I started to sort of blossom again. I played sports, I danced, I studied abroad in Japan. So
Wow. That's amazing.
it
Did
was
you
really
speak
cool.
any Japanese or no?
A little bit. So I don't practice often, obviously. There's not a lot of people I know that speak Japanese, but I try my best. And there's some core things that you'll never forget, and just the basics: how to be polite, how to introduce yourself. But yeah, that was actually one of my second loves. My first was, after sports, the violin,
Wow.
Yeah, I love the violin. I was a first violinist in my high school orchestra, and I played chamber orchestras. I was in the Stanford Youth Philharmonic,
Oh
Norwalk Youth.
my God, you're amazing.
Oh, you're so sweet. I was a little bit when I was younger, and I loved it. And music was just a way for me to escape and feel better about myself. Really.
Yes, yes. Now, did you have a boyfriend?
Yes, I say that like that because yeah, that was trouble. And I try to tell young girls now, if you can avoid it until you're in college or maybe after, do, because you're so young. And I was learning to navigate life and all of these things, and it seemed like my path was set out for me. As a junior, I had already scored highly on my SATs.
Oh, wow.
I did well on my ACTs, which was a newer thing then, and I was accepted into Yale University. I wanted to study law. I got into just about every college I applied to, which wasn't many. And I'll tell you, when I applied to Yale, I just kind of wanted to see if I would get in.
Sure, why not? Why not try?
And I did, and there was a lot of hate from peers of mine in school,
It's all
but
jealousy. Yeah.
Right. And so I felt like having that, all these options to go to, I knew that my family couldn't necessarily afford it. And I wasn't really doing too much scholarship wise, looking into anything. I felt that my senior year was sort of just to kick back and have fun.
Okay, that's not unusual. A lot of seniors do that. They have, what do they call that? Senioritis. They're so done. They check out all the hard work that you put in, and everything came into fruition. You're like, I am so done, and worry about the cost later. I get it because you're young too, and that's not in your forefront of your mind.
Exactly. And I kicked it up a notch or several notches. And, I was having house parties, I was going out with friends, smoking a lot of pot, and just living life in a way that I maybe shouldn't have been. And back to the boyfriend, I had a boyfriend who I felt like I was so in love with. I had no idea, what life really was and what a relationship should look like. And I exposed myself to a number of situations, um, partly due to that relationship, just, relationships he had, friendships he had,
Was he
and
older? Was he your age? Was he younger?
he was
Just
my age.
he
Yeah,
was
we were
your age.
in grade, and it wasn't my first boyfriend, but it was probably the first that I took more seriously.
Mhm.
And I started to realize that I wasn't as confident in life as I felt I was. And relationships trigger something in you where,
Yeah.
for me at least, I was trying to fill a void, and I felt that this attention, this affection, this what I thought was love wasn't really that. And
Yeah.
in chasing and trying to hold on to that, I exposed myself to a number of negative circumstances and just things that sort of derailed my own path.
So let's talk about this. So you're a senior in high school. You're what, 17, 18 years
Seven.
old? So yeah, so you're 17. You got this boyfriend that the things are good. You know that you're going to college. You've kind of got the plan. You're too cool for school right now, as they say, right? And I remember when I was probably 15 or 16, my parents got me a sign that said, "I wish life's problems hit me when I was 16 and knew everything." So you think you know everything, but really, you're just a babe. And so you're under the influence of this guy who obviously um, has not the same ambitions that you do. So
Hmm.
so paint me a picture of what changed. What was going on? What set you on this path that you ended up following?
Sure. So, and I really like the way you put that, Serena, because I never want to blame anyone, right? We were both young teenagers and we were both just starting to learn how to live. So,
Right.
it's nobody's fault. It's
No.
just life and circumstances. And again, I will say I exposed myself to these things.
Oh yeah.
So in seeking that validation, I'll say, one of the most traumatic moments for me was a time where, and I hope it's okay to share this here,
Oh,
but
yes, of course. This is a safe place. No one is judging you. We want to learn, and if we've been through the things that you have, to understand that we're not alone, and maybe learn how to build pick ourselves back up like you have. So it's free. Yeah.
thanks. So he did have some friends that, were constantly trying to either get with me or date me, or I don't know what it was. And I remember one time, we were smoking weed like friends, and my boyfriend wasn't there, and it was two of his friends and me, but we were in high school. I didn't think anything more of it. And I don't know if it was in my drink or in the weed that we were smoking, but they drugged me with something. I still don't know what it was.
Oh my God.
But I ended up waking up in one of his friends' beds, and I was still fully clothed, but I overheard them in the next room or hallway, talking about planning things, and I was still so out of it that I managed to stumble out of one of the kids' houses and I had no idea where I was. I wasn't far from my house. I was only a couple blocks over from my parents' house. And I got in my car, and like one of them tried to block me from leaving, and I like accidentally tapped him, but not really accidentally.
Yeah, no,
I'm like,
exactly.
I'm out of here. And I did hit something on my way home, but it wasn't a person, so I was
Right. So you're okay.
but I was so afraid and so felt so out of control from
Right.
anything I had known, because marijuana is a drug that, it can delay your sensory system. It can slow you down a little bit, but you're still within control from my own
Right.
experience.
Right.
I made it home. I locked all the doors. I locked my bedroom door and I just went to sleep because I couldn't do much else. It was like I had to muster up so much energy just to do that. So
Wow.
it was scary, and I didn't wake up until the next day, and
Did
this
your
was the first.
parents notice anything when you came home, or they weren't around or to see or?
No, my parents worked a lot. So
Okay.
even if they did, they probably thought, I was smoking weed and I went to sleep or something. And the next day I went, and I remember trying to tell my boyfriend in the nicest way possible and softly, and he just
Right.
didn't believe me. And that
Wow.
started to affect me where, I had shared it with just a few of my close friends, and somebody told one of my guidance counselor in school, and they ended up calling in other people, and they said, well, we can't really do too much because it happened outside of school. And I didn't know if I wanted to do anything about it either. I mean, I didn't know what had happened, the extent of anything. So I said,
Right.
I'll just learn from this. But carrying that, what I now know as trauma, affected me because not only was it something that scared me so deeply, but nobody believed me.
That's
And
so typical back then. Oh my God.
yes, and even now. So, so anyhow, I started just partying a lot more, experimenting with other drugs, and shortly after I graduated high school, in a vulnerable moment, a newer friend introduced me to heroin. And, she said, well, it's just like a crushed pill. And I said, well, I had had my appendix out. I had tried a pill. It wasn't for me. I was like, whatever. I was just in such a depressed moment at the time that I made a very poor choice. And after that, it was just off to the races. I very quickly became addicted to heroin, and within a month, I would say I was intravenously shooting up heroin.
Wow. So did you start out intravenous? Did you just start out by snorting it, I guess? Is
Yeah, I
that
started off snorting it, and
right?
it didn't
And
take. My friend was shooting up, and I remember her shooting me up, and we were really close, and I didn't see or realize the struggle that she was going through because this was all new to me. I had no idea that heroin even existed in our hometown. I didn't
right.
know where she was getting it. I had
Oh
no
my
idea what
God.
led her to it. We didn't really see it as a bad thing. And I'll speak for myself. I knew it was taboo, and I guess I thought I would never get addicted.
Wow. See, I grew up in an area in Yonkers where there were people that shot up heroin all the time, and but we were taught by, some, or at least the older people who were shooting up, they always said to me, don't you ever, ever do it or I'll kick your ass. Even though they were addicted, they looked out for, I guess, me or some of the younger people and just say, this is not the path you ever want to go down. And so I was scared. I was really scared of her. I mean, look, we've all had our share of experimenting and doing things and stuff, but I'm so sorry. That's just, oh my God, just blows me away. So within a month, you're addicted to heroin. And take me through that, what that was like for you. What was it like to find the money? You obviously, college was a distant,
Mhm.
thought, or take me through that.
Sure. So, and thank you for sharing that, because once I fully became addicted to heroin and anybody would say, I want to try it, I'd say, no, you don't ever do this, because once you learn going through that pain, you don't want anyone else to suffer it either. But absolutely. So I always worked as a teenager. I used to babysit. I worked at in a retail store. I worked at Abercrombie for
Wow.
yeah, for a while. I loved it. It was easy work, and it was fun. I made a lot of friends doing that. I also worked at a smoothie shop for some time. So, the healthier habits were there. I had friends that ate well. We worked out, we smoked a little weed, but nothing like this. We even experimented with cocaine at
Mhm.
times, and it wasn't something that stuck. And for once, I was depending or looking forward to, in the beginning, a drug that brought me comfort and numbness.
Wow.
When I first tried it, I remember getting so sick, but at the same time, feeling a comfort that I had never felt before, where I still felt in control. I just felt a little sedated, but almost like that pink cloud people talk about. And it was a euphoric feeling that nothing quite has ever come close to.
Wow.
And it's unfortunate because nobody should ever feel that. So I describe it in a way where, yes, I felt all of these wonderful things, I thought, but you're slowly killing yourself to
Yeah.
achieve it. And it wasn't long before I lost my jobs. I didn't want to go back. I did not go to college. I didn't even think about community college until probably the year after, just because it was local and just to really appease my mom. And I think that my parents and family obviously noted some changes in me,
Yeah.
but didn't immediately call it out and didn't really know what to do with me because I was rebelling at this point. I didn't know how to communicate the things I was feeling, how to regulate my emotions, or
Right.
know what to do with them. You're so young, you're still learning. I'm 17 years old.
Yeah. How did you navigate? I mean, so now you're not working, you're still living at home. You're
Mhm,
you're looking for your next fix, if that's
mhm.
the right terminology to use. How what were your thoughts? What were you thinking at that time? Do you recall?
So it was really affordable in the beginning. I was able to afford it with work, and even when I lost a job, I picked another one up. I didn't really get out of control until I'm so sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
I don't know if you heard that. It didn't really get out of control or spiral until maybe a year in. And at this point, I'm 18 years old. I start becoming friends with local drug dealers and just, hey, I had a car, hey, can you bring these drugs to this customer or this client? So unknowingly, I started running drugs for them.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And
I
in my mind, there's nothing wrong with this. I'm just doing someone a favor, actually, by making it more convenient for them and easier for them to obtain these drugs. So, whatever, bringing the money back to my drug dealer. And eventually, they started giving me my own supply. And I started selling drugs on my own, but to their existing client base.
Okay. Okay. So now you had a car. Did you have car payments and did you have to pay for all that?
No, it was so my first car I bought from working, and then my dad actually got into a car accident with that car. So I don't remember how it happened that my mom ended up passing me on her old car and getting a new car. And okay, so I'm driving this car, I'm living this lifestyle. I one day got so messed up. I was drinking, which I wasn't a big drinker because my dad growing up was an alcoholic. So it wasn't something that attracted me to it.
Right.
He was a calm drinker, he drank his beer and he mostly stayed home and would, like, pass out. But this one day I was with friends. I was still selling drugs at the time. I was smoking, I was drinking, I was still doing heroin. And I don't know what else I took that night. I ended up driving home and flipping my car, totaling it. It went up in smoke, and I'm
Oh my God.
driver's seat. By chance, a friend of mine from high school happened to see it or drive by. I don't know what happened, and he pulled me out of my car. And I ended up waking up over a week later in the ICU, after being in a coma.
Oh my God. Now, so obviously your parents know that you're going through something and it's more than just, smoking pot and drinking alcohol. And so you, I don't even know how to phrase. So
Yeah.
so what were their thoughts? And when you wake up from this coma, are you feeling shame or feeling like, you need to get back out there and get your next fix? What take me through that.
So, yes, the second part. I was like a mad person. My arm when I woke up was like as thick as my thigh because they had, I guess, put the IV incorrectly in. So all the fluids were just blowing up my arm. And I woke up and I'm like yelling, and everyone's like, calm down, calm down. I'm like, calm down. You don't see my arm. Like, what's wrong with you people? So they transferred me down to like a regular room, and I was like, just get me out of here. And my mom shows me that, my accident was on the news, and yeah, that I yes, yes, it was a mess. My first thing to her was, okay, I have to go. She knew, and my parents knew. They would confront me at times. Up to this point, my mom's started finding things. My sister would tell on me when she'd
Yeah.
find things, and but I would just deny, deny, deny. And I guess they were also in denial because they either sort of believed me or just dealt with what I was going through. So I said to my mom, I got to get out of here. I have to go meet someone. And I didn't tell her who. I just said, my friend has my stuff.
Of
And it was, one of my drug dealers. I needed to get
course.
high. I felt like, I don't know what I'm feeling, but this is withdrawal, and I need my fix.
Wow. So as soon as you wake up in the hospital, within a week or less than that, you were back out and back on the street.
Yeah, yeah, essentially. And one of the dealers that I was working with, it wasn't long before he was arrested. And I wasn't with him at the time. I probably I only got a very small supply at the time because these guys know I'm still a drug addict. They
Right.
saw me as a junkie. And yes, I had a car and everything, and I maintained, I still tried to appear normal because of my family and to maintain employment, whatever small gig I had at the time. But I was really struggling inside. So I eventually connected with actually a guy that I was selling drugs to. And we started dating, and we were together for almost 8 years, dating as young kids, both struggling with heroin addiction. And I started eventually going to other things because I couldn't hold down a job. I became so addicted. Um, what drug dealer was going to trust me with a supply anymore? I never
Right.
burned anyone in that case. Anyone who worked with me would still say, I was sort of an honest junkie.
An honest druggie.
Yes. Um, but
But with
so we started
yeah,
boosting baby formula, and that was something that we were put onto by other people who were using drugs on the streets. And they said, I saw someone maybe dropping off baby formula to a bodega when we were buying drugs in the streets. And I said, hey, what are you doing with all that? How many babies are you feeding? And
yeah,
he was like, no, you know how much money you get for these? I mean, if you're okay with shoplifting. And I was like, yeah, I'm okay with shoplifting. Why not? Do you see what I'm doing now?
yeah.
So I started boosting baby formula, and sometimes we would see up to like $500 a day, uh,
God.
sometimes more, yeah, just from cleaning the shelves, of the baby formula and bringing it to the bodegas, and then, I got arrested multiple times for that.
Wow. See, I was a mom of triplets, and so I know how expensive baby formula is.
Yeah.
I used to buy it by the case, and I would get the pediatrician to donate cases to me at the time. I mean, that's no joke. That's crazy. Wow. So was there, I mean, usually most survivors have a moment, like a breaking point or just where something happens and you whisper, it's enough. Did that happen for you? I mean,
I laugh and I'm like, I'm almost getting emotional thinking of moments where I almost had that clarity, but in spite of that pain that I was feeling, because I would always put on this tough exterior, at the time when I'm running the streets, I'm like maybe 85 pounds soaking wet. I mean,
oh
I was
my God.
a tiny thing, and you wouldn't nobody turned to really look at me because I didn't look like your stereotypical drug addict, and I was young, and if I
Mhm.
was 18 using drugs, I probably looked like I was 14 years old, even younger than.
Wow.
So I went through a lot of difficulty. I went through
So you got busted for shoplifting all the
I
time.
got busted for shoplifting, and I'll tell you, one of the times I was actually pregnant.
Oh,
And yeah, and not I wasn't aware, and then I became aware, and yeah, and my parents, really, everyone in my life was like, you can't have this baby. And I know that this is very raw, but it's real.
no, but it's real. It's true. Yeah.
Women to know, because it was a very difficult decision that I had to make, and I had an abortion because, and I didn't want to. I thought, this could be the thing that's going to change my life.
Gonna save you, right?
Yeah, this is going to be it. I'll figure it out. But I knew deep down that nothing was going to stop me from doing drugs, and that was my primary concern. And I even remember, like, being arrested, and telling them, because they have to prep you at a certain point, for abortions, depending on how far along you are.
Yes.
And I had gone the day before, and they dilated me, and the next morning I was going in for a procedure, and I was arrested that evening for boosting baby formula. And I called my mom. I'm like, you have to bond me out. I have to have surgery. What am I going to
Oh,
do? Go into
God.
jail like this?
Wow.
So, no, but I did have to, and they were able to postpone my court date. But I still had this mentality, because how entitled was I, that I'm calling my mom, like, you have to bond me out. You have no
Mm,
choice unless you want me to, what, have a baby in jail.
right.
And my parents, my poor parents, what they had to deal with me. And
Oh my
at the
gosh.
same time, I'm feeling this shame, but I'm redirecting it as anger. So I
Yeah.
was a really, really angry girl for a long time. And
Oh my
people
gosh.
who know me now, like, they have no idea. They really have no idea. I was not a nice person. And yeah, so I went to court after that, feeling empty,
Yeah.
feeling, you know, not processing this traumatic experience that I just went through, and then this other traumatic experience of being arrested. And I was eventually arrested 6 times within one summer, it felt like. So, like,
Oh,
3 to 4 months span. Because once one place picked me up for shoplifting, the other places saw me in the newspaper, and they all issued warrants for me. So the next time I was arrested, I was transported from Stanford Police Department to Greenwich Police Department to Norwalk Police Department.
oh my God.
Yeah, so I had to face all of that in court, and I had a phenomenal public defender that was very understanding, and he tried to get me drug treatment, but the court just offered me accelerated rehabilitation, or AR, which, they give you a probationary period essentially, and if you do well and stay out of trouble, they agree to nolly your charges, basically drop your charge.
Wow.
Um,
Wow.
yeah, amazing, but I did not do well. I didn't. I found
Oh,
new ways to fund my addiction. Well, I went back to work. I said, you know what? I've just got to pretend harder. I have to act on the outside like I've got it together. And my boyfriend at the time, he had been on probation. So he kind of knew how to navigate, giving them fake urines at probation and maintaining a job a little bit just so that you can look like you're doing well, but you're still struggling with addiction. I mean,
Wow.
and even I hadn't gone to treatment yet at this point at all. I didn't know what drug treatment looked like. I only knew what I saw on TV. Celebrities like Lindsay Lohan, who are rich
Right.
and famous, go to rehab because they can afford it.
Yep.
And so I thought, I'm from like a low middle class family. Why I'm not going to make my parents pay for rehab. And my mom, I remember calling around and she was like, I can't afford this. We didn't know that your health insurance could pay for a part of it. We had no idea how to navigate these systems.
Wow.
And I was blessed that my parents even still allowed me in their home. And for a period of time they didn't. They put me out. I had a brief period of homelessness, you
Oh
know
my God.
sleeping outside, trying to figure that out.
Oh, honey.
But I still felt like I was this unstoppable little girl, and I always figured it out. Eventually, with the boosting just of different things, Red Bull was a big one too. um, I would get like, $20 together and then pay someone to stay on their couch who was also using, or like, exchange drugs for a place to stay. And eventually I was able to get my own room, and then with my then boyfriend an apartment. And I was working three jobs at one time just to be able to afford my addiction and our place.
Was there ever a point where you just said, maybe I should stop this addiction?
Not for a while. Things got worse. I eventually reconnected with my first drug dealer after he came home from prison,
Oh
and
boy.
yeah, I started selling drugs for him. And he had a whole crew of us selling drugs. It was a bunch of us in different areas, and we were making really good money. And I didn't see anything wrong with it until I was arrested by the DEA.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So there was a sting operation, I guess, for the DEA to be involved.
So it wasn't a sting operation. They picked up one person first, and then it was like a chain of events. Actually, our main drug dealer was arrested before I was even arrested or anyone else was arrested, which isn't usually how it goes, but
Right.
he sang like a canary. And I guess he said, yeah, I'm not the only one involved. His then girlfriend, who was pregnant with his baby at the time,
Oh my
um,
God.
and gave birth. And I lost touch, so I don't know how they're doing. But she was arrested, and then I was arrested, and it was a couple of other people that either got arrested or got away unscathed because they cooperated. Ultimately, it was just me and my drug dealer at the end of the day on the indictment.
Oh my God.
And yeah, and everybody was like, you should tell, you should tell. At the point when I was arrested, they already knew everything. So I was probably the lowest level drug dealer and out of our group, and I'm sitting there with like the highest person up because I didn't cooperate, and they gave me every opportunity to do so. So what I did was I ultimately took accountability for my actions, but I was facing 15 to 30 years for a manslaughter for selling drugs to someone that I wasn't there. And I had a great attorney who was able to go different places and gather different forms of evidence and video and place me at a different location than where it happened. But if it wasn't for that, I mean, ultimately I would have been convicted of something I didn't even do.
Oh my God. Wow. Okay, so someone had died, I guess, from the drugs, and that's why they were really coming down on you guys.
Yeah.
Oh my God. So how did that make you feel? You,
It made me feel horrible. And that was the point when I finally started to realize something's got to change in my life. because I felt like this unstoppable person. And now I'm facing the rest of my life in prison for something that I didn't do. So I knew at this point that something really had to change. And I'm sitting in prison now with no way out. I had no bond. The government did not want to hear from me because they gave me opportunities to cooperate, and I didn't. I felt like I was protecting people that I thought were loyal to me, but I had no idea they were the very first to sell me out. So, and you don't know, I was the only drug addicted person, I should say, also, and part of our conspiracy, which the government called it. And the court did ultimately go a little bit lighter on me, but during pretrial and being held incarcerated and not knowing if I'm actually facing this 15 to 30-year sentence, and all of this being said in a courtroom in front of my family for the first time, I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat. I mean, I was sleepless, going over things in my head, meanwhile detoxing from drugs in prison.
Right.
Yeah.
In prison. So you're detoxing. It's cold turkey, right?
Cold turkey. And well, actually, the first place I was detained was at York Correctional in Connecticut, and they did give me some methadone for about a week to get me off of it. And I had been on methadone for a long time before that, because the courts, well, at the time, probation had encouraged it as an option to possibly assist me. And it personally, for me, it wasn't entirely helpful. It didn't dig me deeper into my addiction either, but it helped me for some time when I was in prison, at least
Yeah.
that first week. But it's still nothing compared to when you have an endless supply of drugs and you're using
Yes.
so heavily for so long. At this point, I was about, I want to say, 25 years old.
Wow.
So using just about every single day heroin, and you become consumed, I mean, mind, body, and soul. I didn't recognize this person who was now laying on the prison floor, humbled,
Oh,
next to the toilet shared by four other women in a
oh my.
cell. And being yelled at, like, shut the F up, because I'm throwing up so much. And I'm just laying there, like, sorry, I'm so sorry. And like, I really wanted to tell her to F off,
Exactly.
but
Oh,
I'm like, I'm stealing sleep from people that are not drug addicted. And yeah, there were other girls in there that were struggling with addiction, but maybe not fully aware of their sentence coming. Everyone's just anxious in there, and struggling and depressed and crying and so many things. So fast forward, I did several months of not only prison but drug treatment. Finally got sent to a program. I had a wonderful attorney, not paid for by my family but from the courts,
wow.
because I had a co-defendant. So if you can't afford an attorney, they assign you a public defender, but you can't be represented by the same firm, which in this case was the U.S. government. So they hire out what they call special public defenders or private attorneys who agree to work with them. And this man was just so, he believed in me and saw me more than I saw myself. I don't know why, because I lied to him too. I didn't know who to trust. I didn't know who to be honest with. And he told me, the government knows everything now. The questions that they ask you, they already know 85% of the truth.
Right.
So, at this point, I would just say take accountability for what you've done and shed some light on your trajectory with this specific drug dealer. And that's ultimately what I did, and I was sentenced to time served,
Wow.
for the time I had been in, and then the time I did in a program. And I was not remanded to prison like they wanted to. Plus I think it was 3 years of probation, federal probation.
Wow.
And before they even sentenced me, I had relapsed.
No.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh my God. Were you outside of the prison by this point
I
or?
was, I was. So I was
Oh,
in
honey.
prison, and then I went into a transitional house just for holding. I was on 24-hour lockdown, and then I went into a drug treatment program for 4 months. And I essentially was clean off of everything. And it wasn't until I came home And, you know, a lot of friends are like, oh, they see you on social media. You're home now. You know, I'd love to take you to lunch. You know, let's go out together, whatever. So I'm hanging out with a friend of mine who also happened to sell drugs. And, you know, I'm like, oh no, I won't go back to that. And,
Oh,
you know, he wasn't looking to give me anything either. Maybe, I don't know at this point.
right.
But he told me, oh, I heard your co-defendant just got sentenced to 15 years. And that totally shattered me. And I was
Wow.
like, what? Like, I could
Yeah.
cry now thinking about it.
Oh my
And
God.
that I didn't know who to turn to that would understand the anxiety that was now crippling me all over again. And
Oh my God.
so I turned to the one thing I found comfort in, and that was drugs.
Wow.
This point, heroin was no longer just heroin. It was fentanyl, and fentanyl was a big part of my case. I should add as well. You know, there were people who were seeking it, and although I wasn't one of the people using fentanyl at the time, it came to a point where you no longer asked for it. It was just putting your drugs. So I now was overdosing. I had a smaller overdose in the past on heroin, but this was like full on. I was gone for a couple of minutes and I had to be Narcaned and brought back. And I still remember like coming up off the ground and I'm like gasping for air and just like everyone's yelling around me like, "Are you okay?
Wow.
Breathe, breathe." And I just start vomiting and I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I didn't know that I had overdosed. I had no idea and I'm like, why am I on the ground? Just putting these things together in my head.
Right.
And
Well, recovery is never a straight line. I mean, there's always, setbacks and, starts and fits and wow. So oh my God. So what happens? You get back up and you're like alive. And what are you thinking? Take me through that.
uh, I I honestly thought about how I didn't know any better that I had just died. And it was really challenging to process. I didn't have a lot of friends at the time. I had burned a lot of bridges in my active addiction, and anyone that knew about my arrests probably didn't want anything to do with me anymore. I didn't want to tell my family I had just overdosed, so they had no idea.
Oh, I just got chills. Oh my God.
Yeah, and I just thought about I would have been none the wiser, and honestly, I didn't care if that's how I went. I was
Oh,
just so depressed and anxious, and that's that's the only way I can describe myself because my heart was constantly racing. My mind was like a tape recorder going over things I should have done differently, what I should do differently now, what I did wrong, and shaming myself because now I'm on probation. You know, I you can't really pass those fake urines in federal probation. So
right.
my probation officer was like, you know, you came back positive for opiates. We've got to put you in treatment. We've got to, and I had so many. So in the span, I'll fast forward in the span of like 3 years, I had at least 2 dozen dirty urines. And my probation officer tried sending me to a 30-day program, a 2 month program, a 3 month program. I had broken my leg in between this, gone to rehab in a wheelchair,
Oh my
through
God.
all of this. And I'm just like, I I have so much pressure on me to stop doing drugs, but it's all I know. And I got back on the methadone. So now it's been like on and off, going on 12 years of straight like drug use and being on support meds, you know, methadone
Sure.
for about 10 years and being caught up in the system for about 10 years as well. And
So,
event-
so, yeah. So, continue. I'm sorry. Go
no,
ahead.
no,
Continue.
you're fine.
I was just curious about like, did you have community? Were you, where were you living at this time? What was, just give me the picture too,
That
you know.
that's a great question. I did not have community. I started dating somebody new who I had met in recovery, and I think I might have actually triggered his relapse because although I didn't want to use in front of him, it was you're around me. You notice I'm high, so you start using as well. So we became, you know, using buddies essentially too. And yes,
Wow.
I felt supported by him, and but my family just they were still like in denial, kind of just dealing with it. I didn't have really much support elsewhere. I just felt a lot of shame. I felt like a
Mm.
lot of people were like, you have to do better, you have to get better, but I didn't really know how. I'm like, this is what feels good to me, this is what I know. I didn't see a day where I could not use drugs. So instead of being this rebellious, strong willed young girl who was once running the streets, I became a shell of myself. I would
Mhm.
isolate. I would go into my room every night with a pint of ice cream.
Oh,
I was eating a pint of ice cream every night. And I'll tell you, at first, I didn't. But when I started gaining weight, people would see, oh, she's gaining weight. She's healthy. You know, so I'm like, yes, I'm going to keep eating all this junk food and ice cream so that people think I'm doing great. But really, I was gray. I had like no
yeah.
light behind my eyes. I was going through the motions. I was doing my community service because I was constantly being punished by probation for these dirty urines. So they would either put me in lockup for a day, a couple of times it happened.
To
So a couple
try and scare you straight,
yeah,
right?
try to scare me straight. They would send me back to court. They would give me multiple hours of community service. Meanwhile, I'm trying to hold down a job. I went back to school full time.
You
So I'm
did.
putting all these pressures on myself, and they would say to me, on paper you look great, but you're using fentanyl. You're shooting fentanyl every day. Like this isn't normal. And so my probation officer violated me, and I went before the judge not once but twice. So the first time he allowed me to go to another inpatient treatment program, but there were drugs in there as well. So I
Sure.
didn't stop. I had the option, absolutely, but my mindset was just like, no, I need to just feel good because I felt so bad about myself.
Oh my gosh.
And people were saying terrible things to me to try to like get me to react, but it just made me feel more like shit. It made me feel
Yeah.
like crap about myself and just low, low, low.
You,
So
nobody was building you up. They thought by pushing you down, eventually you'd like say, screw this, I'm gonna stop. But it had the opposite effect.
yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
So the judge was disappointed because he was the same judge that gave me the opportunity of probation after the time I had served, and he couldn't even really look at me. He said, I don't see any other option but to send you back. And the prosecutor was not nice. She was like, Your Honor, this girl is hopeless. She is a drug addict, and that's all she wants to be. And we have exhausted all of our resources trying to help her, even though there is no such thing as exhausting your resources trying to help somebody. As
Right.
long as somebody is alive, you should invest in them and believe in them. But hearing those things in court, and her saying that I was hopeless and I was
That
never
she
going
was
to.
giving up on you.
Yeah,
And
yeah, and she was mean about it too,
oh,
but the judge said, they wanted to sentence me to more time and then probation after coming home again. And the judge said, I'm not quite there because she's not necessarily committing new crimes, but
right.
he is a danger to herself. And I agree with that. So they sent me back to max out my sentence, which was about 10, 11 months. And
Oh,
so this time I actually went through the federal carceral system. I was first sent to Rhode Island, and then to Oklahoma, and then to Philadelphia. And this time it was completely cold turkey. So I wasn't just kicking the fentanyl, I was also kicking the methadone, which I became educated on it and learned through my own experience. It literally seeps into your bones. And
wow.
it was the worst withdrawal and detox beyond the drugs, which is bad enough. But suffering like that again on the floor. I had seizures where I had one bad one where I fell and I hit my head so hard it knocked out like two of my teeth.
Oh
One
my
of them was
God.
like a shard, but the prison didn't pull it out, so I couldn't even eat because I kept scraping and bleeding every time I would try to eat or speak from that. Yeah, but I felt
Oh,
like every single tooth in my mouth was loose. I really thought that I would be toothless by the time
oh
I
my
left prison. It's
God.
like it's funny, but
No,
it's funny
it's
now, but at the time I was like,
mm,
"God, please." But
wow.
with all of that, I carried all that pain. I carried that shame in with me, and I those words from the prosecutor sat really heavy with me. Not so much for me because I was still this person that didn't really care about myself, and I was almost living to die.
Yeah.
But more, I thought about other girls who I was in prison with and how they're just so given up on, and men and women who hear that they're hopeless. So a very, very tiny part of me this time, and I'll be honest, I used to pray when I would go into prison, like, God, please just take my life. As sad as that sounds, I would say, God, I don't want to live anymore because
Oh.
it's so painful and it's so like I hated myself and everyone hated me.
What about your parents? Were they still there? I mean, would they visit you? Would they
Well, they really couldn't. It was so far away. They supported me. My dad and my sister didn't really talk to me for some time, but my mom was there, begrudgingly and
oh,
very like, shame on you. But she was,
yeah, but she was
and
there.
the guy I was dating, he was struggling as well. He ended up getting clean, going to prison as well. But I started to hold on to faith this time. And
Mm,
I said, you know what? I'm going to do something different. I started praying instead of God, take me, God, help me make it to tomorrow because I felt like I was going to die. I was in so much physical, mental, emotional pain
wow.
that at this point it was like the court system had given up on me too. So why
Oh,
give up on myself? So I felt like that was my bottom. That was my final bottom. And
wow.
even prison guards were telling me, you're really strong for going through detox like this. I said, well, what do people usually do? And one of the COs said to me, oh, I don't know, I had a guy jump from the second tier last week with a blanket tied to the pole. And I was like, oh yeah,
Oh,
no, I wasn't quite there.
no.
um that Yeah, I wasn't quite there. But I started praying and I started opening the Bible, one of the only books you get in prison, and little by little I started seeing like glimpses of hope in the words that were in the Bible, especially in Psalms and Proverbs. And I
There were the signs that were meant for you to see.
yes, and I started
Wow.
writing them down and pasting them to my wall and just looking forward. And every morning I woke up, I would say, God, thank you. Please help me get to tomorrow. Please help me get to the end of my sentence. And it wasn't easy. And everyone had every reason to give up on me. And I had the reason to give up on myself too. But I made it through and I met some beautiful women in prison. I started, tutoring women, teaching women who only spoke Spanish, English, helping them with their GED homework, helping them with their
Oh,
parenting.
because you were so smart. Yes, so it was all there.
It was all there, but I also always loved to help women.
Yeah.
So I was already connected with a nonprofit that I was volunteering with and working with briefly before I went back into prison. And when I came home, I went into the halfway house. I had to sit there for a few months. And all of a sudden, being back out in reality, I started feeling like this is different. I have to learn to live without drugs. And I kept
Yeah.
thinking about it. And I would have nights where I couldn't sleep, being afraid that I would go back to the one drug that essentially destroyed my life as I knew it to that
Right.
point. And I just had to fight back and talk to myself and talk to those thoughts and say, I rebuke this in the name of Jesus or whatever.
Yeah.
like, no, the devil is lying to me. Nope.
Wow.
I would start changing my thoughts. That's not going to happen. This is not this way. I almost felt a little bit like, weird talking to myself, but I that's what worked for me. And it was like a switch flipped in my brain where eventually those thoughts went away.
Thank God. So your survival, you turned it into purpose. I'm going to fast forward a little bit to
Hmm.
talk about what you, what it actually turned into. So talk about today. What do you do to, so you went through hell in a handbasket, you come back, you found a purpose and you use that purpose. And today, talk about what your life is like.
I could cry just thinking about it because I am so blessed. You
Oh,
know, I'm a reentry professional in my community, so now I get to help other people who are coming home get their lives back together. And
my
I'm
God.
a program manager for Her Time in Stanford, which is a women's social justice group, but essentially an empowerment group for women who have navigated any of life's challenges,
Mm.
who are impacted by all systems in place, not just the carceral system, but that is a huge part of it. And my full-time role, because that's just a part-time, is I'm an outreach and engagement specialist for Entry Point Staffing, and we are a second chance staffing agency. So we work specifically with justice impacted individuals, anyone who has a criminal background, to get them employed. And
Wow.
yes, and I have been
Wow.
with.
God bless you. Oh my God. Now, so you've been on both sides of the system now, once as someone caught up in it and addicted to drugs, now as someone who's changing the world, literally,
You're
by
so
helping. But you are because, if you had someone like you back then, I just wonder, someone to advocate for you, if things might have been different. And I have to ask you if there's someone listening right now who's struggling, whether it's addiction, trauma, just the weight of anxiety or their past, what advice would you give them?
I would tell them that they are worthy of a better life, of a beautiful life, of a
Mm,
life beyond their dreams,
mm.
and to never give up on themselves. And
Oh,
and I'm sorry I'm getting emotional, but
no, I'm getting emotional too.
but truly, what kept me stuck, and you said it beautifully, Serena, because I always say I have now become the support I once needed.
I love that. I do. I really do. And I have to ask you, one of the hardest things in life is to forgive ourselves.
Mhm.
Do and self-forgiveness is a big part of recovery. How did you begin to forgive yourself, or what did that look like for you?
It looks like every day being understanding that I'm still human and that I'm learning and growing. And
Oh,
I'm only going on in May, next May will be 5 years of recovery for me.
oh,
Um,
God bless you. That's
Thank you.
amazing.
So it is amazing because that's a huge number for me. But for so many others, it's like it's only 5 years. Yes, but like you do it day by day, and
Yes.
every day you have to work on not only forgiving yourself, but those around you, life circumstances, and understand that we're all living for the first time.
Oh my
And
God.
I do believe that our story is written before we even live it
I
out.
agree. I agree.
So the one thing that I aim is to always, always be kind.
Yeah.
And it's not always going to happen because, we have emotions, but
Yeah.
through methods like practicing mindfulness, exercising, being around community, asking and accepting help when it's offered. Because, like I shared, I was this young girl who thought I had all the answers, I had it all together, running
Mm.
the streets. And meanwhile, today, I'm a grown woman who knows I don't have all the answers. I'm still going to try my best, but being forgiving of each other and ourselves. And I won't lie and say that there isn't a certain level of shame attached to my story and the way I live every day. There will always be, because I'm ashamed of who I was. But today, I own that that was who I was then, and it's not who I am today. I don't allow it
Right.
to define me.
Yes.
I'm a new
Yes.
person, and I firmly believe, and I always say to people, if you don't own it, it will own you.
You're right.
And it
Absolutely. Oh my God. That's the story behind it. I mean, you cannot let your past keep creeping into your present and and define who you are. You know, you are the one in charge of your life. And you're responsible, yes, for the decisions you make in this life. But that's it. You're not responsible for other people's, just your reaction to it. And if you had one thing or one message about recovery, redemption, that really you're passionate about, what would it be?
Oh, well, something I say to people often is if you put just half the energy into yourself and turning your life around that you put into your addiction, because that was a lot of work what I was doing. That was really strenuous, but I made it happen. If
Yeah,
you can chase a better life, and if you can chase a better you, because you have to do it for yourself. And
you
people always
do.
say that, but I didn't love myself. I
Yes,
didn't see myself. I
yes.
didn't care. So if you can just start to believe that you're worthy and love yourself, you can make
Mm,
anything happen. And it's
that
not
is
easy, but
beautiful.
it's so, so, so worth it.
Oh my God, Mary, you are, what a beautiful soul you are. And it's so true because so often the hardest people, the hardest critics on ourselves are us.
Mhm.
You know, it's so easy to, forgive other people or, let things go for other people's mistakes. But when it's us, we're the hardest. We criticize ourselves. We are just so unforgiving and where it's you have to give yourself grace, right? You
Yeah.
have to give yourself love. And I can't thank you enough for sharing your story with us today. It was so impactful and so beautiful. And it just reminds us of every day to be grateful for the blessings that we have and to start every day grateful. And at the end of every show, I like to close with a poem that my son had written. And I picked this one because it resonated a little bit with your story. And it's called People. And it says, people mess up. They make mistakes. And is that because they don't know their place? Everyone will only view you as the way you project yourself, the way I say you protect yourself. I used to be sensitive. I'd cry all the time. I couldn't even lie. But then I figured out how to stay alive, play on the other side. I covered myself in a shield of confidence so people didn't make me feel bottomless. People are more complicated than they seem. For you don't know if that person you see is really your friend or if they're just a dead end to no contend. Everyone wants friends, those who will love them to no end. You won't know if that person standing in front of you, saying they'd lift the world for you, really even loves you until they leave you because they found more people to hang around, leaving you askew in a hole that you can't climb out of because all your energy is in pursuit of why they dropped you instead of how this proves they don't deserve the true you. So it resonated with me with your story and how addiction and just life. And this was a 16-year-old boy. And I have to say, for those listening, I hope Mary's story reminds you that your past does not define your future, and every day is a chance to begin again. And if this episode touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Together, we can make a difference. Spread the message of love and kindness and work together. And Mary, if people want to get in touch with you or follow you, do you have anything you can share with our listeners?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, that poem was absolutely beautiful, and your son was wise beyond his years because
Oh
to
my God.
encapsulate so much emotion and wisdom, it was so touching. And
Mm,
yes, I just want to tell people, give those second chances because, like he said, we all make mistakes, and
mm,
if you're interested in becoming an employer who gives second chances to individuals who are trying to get back on the right track, please visit careerresources.org. And also, if you want to support our Hang Time group, which is a co ed version of Systems Impacted Individuals, please visit hangtimerealtalk.com. And it is
mm.
also the platform that created Her Time, which I co manage in Stanford. We do so much beautiful work, so please reach us there. I'm on LinkedIn, Mary Valdovinos. I'm on Facebook and Instagram, Mary Epiphany, which is my middle name. So
Wow, that is amazing. Talk about the universe.
funny, right?
I love that. Oh my God. Well, Mary, thank you again. And to our SOS listeners, thank you for joining us today. SOS Stories of Survivors, where survival sparks the soul. I'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks.